No, he just gets in. Yeah. We'll see in about 20 minutes. Yeah. I'll park around here. We'll probably have a little chit chat. Don't lose him. Hey, Pete.
Hey man, how you doing?
Good. You didn't want to call me mate, huh? In this country, you got to say man.
Man, all right.
But you're a
Okay,
New
mate.
Zealander, and I was looking forward to you saying good day, mate. Anyway, how's it going?
It's good. Happy to be on Nantucket.
Are you? You been here before?
No, in fact, I came past. I had a boat Earth race, and we came past here in 2006.
Okay. Yeah.
And I slid in by the harbour, that old lighthouse out there, and I had a look, and
What'd you think?
did
you like
I was wishing we had to come in, but we had a booking in Boston, and we had to get up there to meet some sponsors. So I skipped it all together, and it's taken me another 8 years to get back here.
Unbelievable. So what brings you here?
So I've been talking to this guy, Scott Leonard, who he's helped out on a Kickstarter campaign recently, and he's been talking about the Seal Abatement Coalition, and it did raise a few of my hackles, I guess. I think seals have a lot of problems around the world, and the grey seal is one of the success stories, the way it's come back, and then to hear that there's some locals here that are trying to figure out a way to reduce their numbers and control them in some way. So Scott, I was in the US doing some fundraising. He said, come on up to Nantucket and we'll show you around, and it was a chance for me to come and talk to some people about the seals.
What did you find?
I've actually got a solution, I reckon.
All right.
At the moment, the way the Seal Abatement Coalition is looking at it, they're saying the problem is the seals. You've got this one island, Muskeget Island, which has at its peak, say 15,000 seals there, and 2 people. The problem is actually the 2 people, and I think there should maybe the state government or the land bank or someone should come up with a solution that sees that guy removed from the island. Like he's saying that they're 800 pounds and they can be a bit dangerous and whatever. He's the problem in this. Remove him from the island. So I actually came up with a term, the Snow Abatement Coalition. We need to remove the guy Snow from the island, and there's plenty of precedents of this in many parts around the world where you've got very significant ecological sites that in some cases wrongly people were given rights to go living on them. A great case was in New Zealand, the middle of Fiordland. There was one guy living in the middle of what's a very important conservation estate, and the government stepped in and said, right, this is going to be the last guy who's allowed to live on this piece of land, right. And when he passes away, the land was purchased by the state.
I think there might be something like that in effect for him.
Oh, is that right?
I believe so.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it comes down to the fishing too. A lot of these guys are sport fishermen, and they feel that it's really affecting the fishing.
See, here's the thing with the fishing, and
anyway, are there too many seals? I mean, is there ever a time where we say, okay, we used to hunt seals, didn't we? Maybe not here, but at some point, would it be smart to bring back seal meat?
No.
It wouldn't?
No, he's just leave them alone.
Okay.
Like as soon as you go creating a legal market for seal meat, how do you tell one that's been shot legally and one that's been shot illegally? And they are one of the success stories here. Like just leave them alone. And they eat mostly sand lance. They're not, they're an opportunist. And if there's an injured big fish in front of them, they will grab it. But generally they're eating small fish, and especially the sand lance. And the fact that they've come back, man, that should be celebrated. And also, the guys are a bit clever in the way they're talking about numbers. They're saying 30 years ago, there was none on there. But if you go back 200 years, there was probably 100,000 on there. And so they've picked the timeline that suits their argument to say, hey, they're out of control now. We've got 15,000. If you go back several hundred years, there was 100,000 of them. And what you've got now is the situation is coming back to what it should have been. I think it was wrong to ever impose the $5 bounty, and that went for a long time and had all of the seals wiped out of the area. And if you look at Nantucket, it was the greatest whaling province on earth for a long period and dominated the whaling industry. And then that industry died, and it's become, maybe a tourist place. And I think to some degree now it's real estate and construction is sort of booming at the moment. But tourism is what this place makes its name on. And the ecology and the wildlife here is an important part of that. People don't come out here just to go to nice restaurants. They come out here because it's got these beaches, it's got this wildlife, and it lets people see a little bit of nature. And the fact that you've got this extraordinary island over here with 15,000 seals on, that should be celebrated, not looking at ways, let's go shooting them. And here's another thing. If you guys started doing a seal cull, for want of a better word, you are going to have protesters all over this island. And you're going to have people flying drones. It's going to become a circus. And, Nantucket survives on tourism.
You've seen this happen before in other places?
You look, in Namibia, it is becoming known for the seal clubbing industry. And the video of it goes viral. Every time there's someone manages to film the seal clubbing.
Namibia does this?
Namibia kills 100,000 a year. I only know because I broke into their diamond mine to try and film it. And we managed to get some footage. And in the end, that footage has been seen, and there's several documentaries have been done about it. But the point I make is like you cannot go shooting seals in a way that is going to look palatable to the public. And you've got tourists who look at. Trust me, there will be a campaign saying tourists do not go to Nantucket. They're out there culling seals, and it would be disgraceful to see that.
Okay, so let's put that one to bed. What do you do for a living? What is your job right now?
So I've got a television show called The Operatives, and I help countries that don't have a lot of money with fisheries enforcement, with anti-poaching, and with trying to stop wildlife smuggling. And I get paid by the network to go and run these missions, and I give the networks what's a pretty cool television show. We film.
Where is it seen?
It's seen in about 20 countries around the world. So in America, it aired on Pivot. We're on the main network, the biggest network in Germany and Italy, and the ratings in those countries are quite good. And some small places it airs in Brazil and Portugal.
Why do you do that? What is? I know you're passionate about conservation, right? I mean, that's where it started from,
conservation is in my blood now. I spent 20 years working, making money, and then decided that I needed to do something more.
What were you making money doing?
When I left school, I worked in the oil industry. I was what's called a wireline engineer, and got paid a lot of money to go out on oil rigs and do what were sometimes challenging jobs.
Yep.
And then I finished up and I did a high-tech startup in New Zealand where we made cameras to control robots. Almost a normal job, but there was kind of something missing. And then in 2006, I launched a boat earth race. And
Tell them what was that all about?
So we set a record for a powerboat to circle the globe, and we were running 100% biodiesel fuel made from waste cooking oils. And we went around the globe in just under 61 days. The old record was about 75, so we beat the record by 2 weeks. Record still stands today, and we use it as a positive way to promote renewable fuels. Then I had this, when I spend all that time on this boat, I wanted to get involved in marine conservation. Like I started to see bottom trawling and problems with the fisheries and that, and there was a challenge. How do I do that? And I got offered to take the boat to Antarctica with an NGO called Sea Shepherd. Took the boat down there and got the boat low on fuel, had to stop, and then a security vessel from the Japanese came and ran us over, split the boat in half, got ordered to abandon the boat.
And you got arrested.
Yeah, so then
How many times have you been arrested, actually?
I've been arrested 3 times.
And this one was pretty serious.
Yeah,
this was scary.
one. Yeah. I mean, they took me back to Japan, and I was in a maximum security prison there, in a difficult place. The second day there, I saw an 18-year-old kid get raped, and up until then, it had seemed like a kind of joke. And prison there, like, it was difficult. I came
You wouldn't
out.
Think in Japan it would be a rough prison life.
Well,
was it rough?
Yeah, what had happened was they put me in the highest security ward in the country, and this one was the who's who of all the worst bastards that they had in Japan.
Because they were pissed off at you, weren't they?
They were pissed off, and it was a high profile case, and
Right.
they didn't want to have Pete Bethune gets in and escapes. When I arrived in Japan, my security detail to get me to prison was over 100 men. So I turned up in the prison, and all the inmates are like, "Who's this bad mother?" Like, well, and they treated me like Hannibal Lecter. And in some ways, they didn't. By putting me in that maximum security ward, it meant the odds of me escaping was virtually zero, and it had greater protection than a medium security. And they were, I remember when I arrived there was these people throwing apples and eggs and stuff at the bus. I was like, what is all this? All I did was...
Were you like the only Caucasian guy there, or were there...
So in my ward, there was 100 inmates. there was 96 Japanese, 2 from mainland China, 1 from Ghana, and myself. So I was the only Caucasian guy. But it was, I came out. It did mess with my head, and I came out. I was not in a good state really, and it took me, probably 6 or 8 months.
What ended up happening? How did that get resolved?
Because
your government, the New Zealand government, did try to get involved or no?
No, the government, they made it pretty clear that they could come and visit me in prison, but they couldn't influence the decision. But I didn't need them to influence it. My job was to get to Japan and say, this is offending New Zealanders and Australians. You guys are whaling in our backyard. And I was on a comms ban for 2 months. Then the media was allowed to come and see me. Every day I'd have a new journalist turn up. I had to pick only one of them. For 15 minutes, I would say, this is why whaling is offensive to New Zealanders and Australians. Court case happened, got a suspended sentence, but by then I'd already done 5 months. I got 5 convictions against my name. There was disruption of business, which was my job, possession of a knife, destruction of property.
Yeah.
I'd cut a net to get on board, and the one I didn't do, they charged me with assault, and I was convicted of that. And that was...
Was that with the acid?
Yeah, that was we were shooting these bottles of butyric acid or rotten butter onto the deck, and they had these things called impulse guns, and they would use them. They fill them with pepper spray, and they were using them to try and stop us from getting aboard their boat. And these 2 guys basically shot themselves with their own pepper spray. They blamed that on me shooting my rotten butter up on their top deck. And there's the video, when you watch the video, there's no way that these 2 guys were injured with me. Like, you see them shoot their pepper spray into the wind, you see this mist come back over them, next thing they're doubled over in pain. So but it served a purpose. It pushed.
Did it?
Absolutely. When I was in prison, there were big protests, especially in New Zealand and Australia, over their whaling. The New Zealand and Australian government took Japan to the International Court of Justice, and Japan lost the case. That since then, the next year they had no whaling. They've now introduced a new scientific program. Scientific is what they call it. It's been reduced by 2/3, so their quota now is 333. It's not a perfect result, but it's a step in the right direction. And sometimes, as a conservationist, we need to play a long game, and we need to say, right, there's a problem here. What's an intermediary step we can get to getting them to stop whaling? Full stop.
So where are we right now? Do you still agree with the tactics that you guys used to use? Is that still going on?
Yeah, I believe that organisation is back down again this year, and in some ways it's a little bit like the government's left it up to people like NGOs to go in and try and deal with, and sometimes NGOs, your job is to expose a festering sore and pick the scab off, and in some ways that's what happened with the time in Antarctica, and it still happens today. I think it's wrong that the Japanese go down there. New Zealand and Australia and there was something like 60 or 70 countries all just signed a request to Japan to cease their whaling in Antarctica. So diplomacy has a role, activists have a role, people who sign petitions have a role to play, and these things hopefully one day will lead to a cessation of all whaling in Antarctica. And I would hate to see a campaign start to try and stop Nantucket from culling seals on an island just down the way here.
They've got a real uphill battle there. I mean, in all honesty, I mean, I doubt that it's going to happen. But,
yeah.
But okay, so that brings us to where you are today. You're fighting to keep the oceans clean and fair for fishing.
Yep.